My name is Elena Brooks. I'm 28 years old, and this is the story of how I discovered the person I loved betrayed me. If you'd met us back then, you would have said we looked like the kind of couple people post on Pinterest boards labeled goals. We met on a rainy Thursday in late September, the kind of day that made our little city smell like wet leaves and coffee. I was leaving the bookstore 2 blocks from my apartment with a tote bag full of paperbacks I couldn't afford, and he was standing under the awning trying to coax a stubborn umbrella back to life. The wind flipped it inside out, he laughed at himself without embarrassment, and then he saw me watching. "I swear, I'm more competent than this," he said, and I remember thinking that I liked people who could be ridiculous without cringing. Noah didn't ask for my number right away. He asked what I was reading. We talked about underlined sentences, about the way a good paragraph can make you feel seen in a way real life sometimes doesn't. He told me he worked at a boutique marketing agency, small, scrappy, hungry. I told him I wrote nonprofit grant proposals and stacked my coffee punch cards like trophies. He walked me home. He didn't try to come upstairs. He texted me a picture of his now mangled umbrella 5 minutes later with the caption, "Fallen soldier," and that was the first time he made me laugh out loud alone in my kitchen. The first months were the kind of soft focus montage people accuse you of exaggerating later. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, him choosing peaches by scent while I argued for plums. We tried new recipes and failed at most of them. We ate burnt lasagna on the floor because my table wobbled if you looked at it wrong. Noah learned how I took my coffee and never once mixed up oat milk and half. I learned he hated cilantro with the kind of passion most people reserve for politics. We were gentle with each other's tender spots. He had a father who left early and a mother who worked double shifts. I had a habit of apologizing for things that weren't my fault and an old ache about never being enough. He treated that ache like something he could put his hands around and hold warm until it stopped hurting. We built rituals. On Wednesdays, he brought me a single flower, never a bouquet, always one stem, and I pressed them between pages of old magazines. On Sundays, we took long walks to nowhere, with headphones around our necks, sharing songs like Secret. We made messy lists in the margins of our lives, places to travel, Portland, Asheville, anywhere with trees, and vintage stores, pets to adopt, a senior dog, we decided, because they deserve endings full of kindness, and a tiny backyard wedding with lights strung between 2 maples. My best friend Tessa met him and looked at me afterward, like, okay, so this one is real. And it felt real in that steady, unshowy way that makes you believe you've finally slipped into the right life. We moved in together the following spring. The apartment was too small and the rent a little too high, but it had a bay window where the light pooled like honey in the mornings. Mrs. Patel, our landlord, called us the nice couple and left us extra basil plants outside our door. We painted the bedroom a color called cloud spun and joked that we were the kind of people who had opinions about paint names. We bought a cheap rug that shed for months and a secondhand coffee table with a dent that looked like a crescent moon. Noah hung frames with a level and a patience that made me feel safe. I handled the pantry labels and the drawer organizers like a tiny general. When we signed our names on the lease, I looked at the loops of his signature next to mine and felt this private click in my chest, like a key turning. Noah was generous with tenderness. He'd warm my side of the bed with his hands on winter nights. He'd leave notes on my laptop on the mornings I had hard calls. "You've got this, E." He asked about my deadlines, knew my coworkers by name, and listened when I ranted about budgets that didn't stretch far enough to cover the real need. He told me my voice changed when I talked about the lives inside my grant narratives, how it got fierce, and he looked proud when he said it. Sometimes, on late walks back from the corner store, he would say, "We're going to have such a good life," like it was a promise he could enforce by sheer will. We got a dog in early summer, a gray muscled mutt from the shelter with foggy eyes and a stiff gait. We named her Juniper because the shelter had called her June, and we liked keeping the history of a thing while still making it ours. She loved Noah with a devotion that softened him even more. I would watch him kneel to wipe her paws, watch that easy smile, and think, this is a man I can trust with futures. My mother, who was slow to approve, hugged him at Thanksgiving and told me, in the sideways way she gives compliments, that he seemed solid. There were moments, small, pale moths in the corners that I brushed away. The first was a late night at his office when I brought him takeout because he said he'd be working heads down on the Porter account. I let myself in with the code he'd given me and found the place dark except for a single desk lamp on in the corner. He wasn't at his desk. My stomach did that useless little drop, the kind you tell yourself is silly. He came up behind me 2 minutes later with wet hair, said he'd showered in the gym down the hall after biking to work. It made sense. The explanation fit without force. I believed it, and then folded the belief up into something tidy and put it away. Another time, his phone lit up while we were on the couch. A message preview, "You're impossible," followed by a laughing emoji. I didn't recognize the name. Jordan Hale, and I didn't recognize the feeling that slid icy down my back. He glanced at the screen, put the phone face down, and kissed the top of my head. "Work," he said, like an apology for the intrusion. Jordan's a copywriter. Banter is part of how we survive Tuesdays. I teased him about being a creative who needed flirty commas to meet deadlines, and he laughed and tickled my ribs until I forgot the question forming in my mouth. We started to have nights where Noah came home a little later than he said he would. Nothing dramatic, 10 minutes here, 20 there, just enough to tug at that quiet thread at the edge of things. He'd toss his keys on the counter and tell me about office politics, about a client who changed the brief after the shoot, about the way Lily, his sister, kept daring him to run a 10K he didn't have time to train for. He sounded like himself, he looked like himself, but sometimes he'd go still in the middle of a story like he was checking some internal script and then start again too smoothly. I told myself I was projecting. That old ache about not being enough will teach you to doubt your instincts until they're hoarse. Tessa raised an eyebrow once when I mentioned Jordan's name in passing. "New character in the ensemble," she said lightly. "Do I need popcorn?" I rolled my eyes and told her not to be suspicious of women in offices like we were in an outdated sitcom. "Fair," she said, "but don't be suspicious of your own instincts either." I told her I was fine, and I believed I was, mostly. Then came a Tuesday when Noah changed his phone passcode. I noticed because muscle memory failed me when he asked me to check his calendar while he chopped onions. The screen blinked red, wrong code. "Oh, it told us to update," he said, slicing too fast, eyes not quite on me. It was a nothing reason, the kind of bureaucratic annoyance we all accept. I smiled, said of course, and swallowed the pebble that lodged suddenly in my throat. It's funny, the exact moment when a perfect picture first blurs. It isn't dramatic, no lightning cracking a sky. It's just a tiny smudge at the corner of an image you love so much you tell yourself it's nothing. I rinsed the lettuce, Noah kissed my shoulder. Juniper snored on her bed. I told myself to breathe and did. But in the quiet space behind my ribs, something small and alert lifted its head. The night Noah changed his phone passcode and called it an IT policy, the pebble in my throat didn't dissolve. It rolled around for days, bumping against other small things I'd filed away as harmless. The message from Jordan that read, "You're impossible," the late nights that had become a habit, the way he'd started putting his phone face down, even when it was just the two of us and Juniper, who cared about nothing but treats, naps, and warm hands. Our rituals started to fray at the edges first. On a Wednesday, he forgot the single stem. He came home flushed with the wet air and said, "You won't believe the client fire." And I said, "It was okay, it was just a flower," and pressed an old one flatter between back issues of The Atlantic, like you can stretch tenderness the way you stretch a sweater. The next Wednesday, he brought a whole supermarket bouquet, cellophane crinkling, and said, "See, I overcorrected." I smiled and cut the stems and thought about how I loved the stubbornness of one flower more than the apology of many. He picked up a new gym habit to build stamina for the 10K Lily keeps terrorizing me about, he said. Mrs. Patel began nodding at him in the mornings, impressed. "Very disciplined," she told me in the hall, handing me another basil plant. Noah started showering the second he came in the door, dropping his keys in the chipped bowl, kissing my cheek, then disappearing into steam. "Bike commute?" he'd call through the door, voice muffled. "I smell like city." He had always liked showering at night, but there was something new in the urgency that made me press my palms to the sink and breathe slow. Little inconsistencies began to catch on me the way burrs catch on socks. He mentioned a new bar near his office, the Oriole. where the team sometimes debriefed after shoots. Noah has the kind of palate that can talk for 10 minutes about the ethical sourcing of coffee beans, but he doesn't care about craft cocktails. He came home one Thursday smelling like lime and something sharp and sweet I couldn't place. Jordan knows the bartender, he said lightly. We got comped. He rarely talked about coworkers with more than a sentence or two, but lately Jordan's name was a small bead in every story. Jordan wants to switch to Seraph on the deck. Jordan did the voiceover for the mock-up. Jordan said the client's brand tone is aspirational millennial uncle, which, fair. The sentences were nothing and something at the same time. I noticed he started taking calls in the hallway, even when the TV was low and the dog was asleep. I'd catch the soft cadence of his voice, gentler than his client voice, not as performative as his pitch voice, and then the front door would creak as he stepped onto the landing. Once, I heard him laugh in this warm, unguarded way that felt like the sound he made when Juniper rested her chin on his knee. When he came back in, I was spooning pasta into bowls. "Who was that?" I asked, with what I hoped was light curiosity. "Lily," he said, reaching for the Parmesan. "She wants to sign up for a 5K first." Later, when I told Lily at brunch that I was impressed by her training, she looked genuinely confused. "Training for what?" she said, and then frowned. "Oh, Noah wants me to, not the other way around." The conversation drifted, but it left a little cut that stung when I washed my hands. Tessa kept doing that thing where she listens with her whole face. I told her I felt ridiculous. "Everything is explainable until it isn't," she said, her voice soft in the booth. "But you know your life. What does your body do when you try to explain it away?" I pressed my palms to the formica and thought of the pebble rolling round and round. "I don't want to be that person who snoops," I said. "You don't have to be," she replied. "You just have to be the person who believes herself." One night, I did look at our joint bank app, more out of habit than suspicion. The rent auto draft had posted. My grocery run was there. And then 2 charges from the Oriole, Tuesday, 5:47 p.m. and 9:22 p.m. 2 visits or 1 tab, split and closed and reopened. I told myself, client dinners do that. I told myself the old ache about not being enough made me see math in everything. When he walked in at 10:40, hair slightly damp, shirt different from the one he'd left in, he grinned and lifted a paper bag. "Citrus bars," he said, "the bakery by the office. He hates citrus desserts." I bit into one and tasted a bright, clean sweetness and could not tell if the bitter was in the curd or in my tongue. The phone became a boundary I wasn't invited to cross anymore. He'd lay it on the counter while we cooked, but he'd swipe away notifications quickly, like he was shooing flies. The code change turned into, Face ID doesn't like me when my beard grows. And when I said my thumbs still remembered the old pattern, he laughed and said, "Baby, you're imagining continuity where there never was any. You just guessed right before." When I told him I felt shut out, he drew me into his chest and said, "Elena, you've been stressed. Deadlines, your boss dumping extra work. You're looking for certainty where there's only mess." He kissed my forehead and used my worry as proof that my worry was the problem. We began to have small, mean fights about nothing that turned into fights about everything. The dishwasher became a proxy war. My tone became the problem. "You hear accusation in neutrals," he said once, not unkindly, which somehow made it worse. Another time, when I asked if Jordan was funny in the way he liked, he smiled in that pitying way I have come to hate. "Do you know how unattractive it is when smart people get insecure?" he said. I went quiet and carried my bruised feelings to the sink and scrubbed a pan that didn't need scrubbing. He stood behind me and said, "Hey, come on, don't do the martyr thing." By bedtime, he'd roll toward me, press his face into my hair, and murmur that we couldn't let normal stress make us enemies. He was both balm and burn. Juniper, who knows nothing of lies, began to hesitate at the door when he came in, sniffing his jeans with sharp little snorts before wagging her tail. "We've got a new office dog," he said, crouching to rub her ears. "Beagle, name's Pickles, smells like Doritos." It was cute. It was plausible. It was a sentence that tied a bow around the air between us. The next day, Lily texted a picture of Noah and a shaggy golden thing at a park, captioned, "Tell Juniper Dad is cheating on her." I typed, "What's the dog's name?" and she wrote, "No idea, belongs to someone from his office." I stared at the 3 dots and then the silence. I asked if we could have a no phones night like we used to. He agreed immediately, almost too brightly, like a teacher rewarding a nervous student. We made carbonara and watched a movie, and he put his phone in the drawer. Mine buzzed twice with spam. His buzzed once, faint, tinny through wood. He didn't flinch. I didn't either. We were two people acting in a play we once wrote together, now improvised with careful hands. When the credits rolled, he said, "See, we're fine," and smiled that winning smile that used to make me feel chosen instead of managed. I saw him on an Instagram story by accident, the way you see yourself in a shop window and realize your posture has gotten small. The agency's social account posted a boomerang from the Oriole, glasses clink, confetti filter, caption, Porter pre-launch vibes. In the left corner, mostly cut off, was the cuff of denim jacket with a frayed seam and a little crescent moon snag his coffee table dent in clothing form. Next frame, a flash of his hand, scar on the knuckle, from when he opened a can with a dull knife raised in a toast toward someone just outside the frame. The someone's nails were painted a dark wine red. The frame ended before they touched. I watched it 5 times, then closed my phone, then opened it again and watched it 3 more times, as if repetition could turn a suggestion into a fact. When he came home, he was giddy, the way he gets when a campaign is humming. He dropped his keys, kissed me on the temple, and said, "We're going to crush this." He smelled like the lime sweet again, only fainter, like something trying not to be obvious. I wanted to ask, who are you toasting, and whose nails, and why does the dog pause at your hem? Instead, I asked, long night? He said, long week, and went to shower, humming under the hot water, steam curling out into our cloud-spun bedroom. I lay on the bed, Juniper a warm weight against my calves, staring at the bay window where the streetlight made a pale square on the floor. There is a kind of unease that isn't panic, but a low, constant hum, like a refrigerator in the night. It vibrated through me. I told myself normal couples have weird weeks. I told myself trust isn't the absence of questions, but the presence of kindness. In the bathroom, the water shut off. I heard the metal whisper of the curtain rings, the soft thud of his towel hitting the rack. "E," Noah called, cheerful, like nothing was failing. "You up?" "Yeah," I said, and my voice sounded steady and far away at the same time. Juniper lifted her head. In the quiet space behind my ribs, that small animal inside me stood up again, fully awake. The moment you first catch the shape of betrayal is not cinematic. It doesn't announce itself with slammed doors or lipstick on collars. It's smaller than that, almost polite. The kind of moment you could ignore if you wanted to keep your life intact. For me, it was a Saturday morning in early fall. The air outside smelled faintly of wood smoke, and Juniper was pawing at her leash, begging for her walk. Noah was still asleep, sprawled diagonally across the bed, the way he did when he stayed out late the night before. His phone, face down as usual, vibrated on the nightstand. I ignored it once, twice, but the third buzz carried a sound I hadn't heard before. A new notification chime, one he must have chosen recently. Juniper barked. I reached to silence the phone so she wouldn't wake him fully. That's when I saw it, a preview at the top of the screen. Jordan Hale. Last night was dangerous. Can't stop smiling. My body reacted before my mind did. The skin under my shirt went cold, as if someone had cracked open a window. My thumb hovered an inch from the glass, but I didn't unlock it. The words were enough. Last night, dangerous, smiling, 3 pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to build. Juniper whined, impatient. I shoved the phone back down, clipped her leash, and walked out the door, barefoot in my sneakers. The autumn air hit me sharp. Every step down the block sounded louder than it should have. On our walk, I told myself I could have misunderstood. Dangerous could mean a risky campaign idea. Smiling could mean a joke at the bar. But in my chest, the small animal that had been pacing for weeks now pressed itself against the cage, frantic. When I came back, Noah was in the kitchen, making coffee. He smiled, like always, asked if I wanted eggs. I searched his face for something, guilt, nerves, hesitation, but he looked steady, even affectionate. He brushed hair out of my eyes and said, "You look pale, E. Didn't sleep?" I shook my head, muttered something about deadlines. Later that day, he told me he needed to swing by the office to pick up a charger. He kissed me quickly, grabbed his keys, and left. A few minutes after, my phone buzzed. It was Tessa. "Oh, did you see this?" She sent me a screenshot of an Instagram story. The Oriole again, a boomerang of two glasses clinking, but this time, no agency hashtags. The caption read, "Stealing time, worth it." The hand in the frame wasn't mine. The nails were wine red, like the ones I'd seen in that earlier story. Tessa didn't add commentary, just, "You okay?" I didn't reply. I stared at the screen until it blurred. My mind flipped back through every little moment, the late showers, the lime-sweet smell, the pitying smile when I asked about Jordan, threads that had seemed separate now twisted into a rope I couldn't untangle. That night, I decided to test him. Not snoop, just listen differently. When he came home, I asked how his charger run went. He smiled easily, quick. Office was dead. He opened the fridge, pulled out a beer, and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. Sure, I said. Then I asked, so who was at the Oriole tonight? His hand froze just slightly on the bottle cap, almost imperceptible, but enough. Then he laughed. What, do you have spies? Instagram, I said lightly, keeping my eyes steady. Agency friends can't keep secrets. He relaxed a little. Yeah. Jordan dragged a couple of us there. Quick drink, nothing scandalous. He leaned down and kissed my cheek, like punctuation. But the caption wasn't agency vibes. It wasn't client wins. It was stealing time. And he didn't know I'd seen that. After he went to bed, I sat in the living room with Juniper curled at my feet. I replayed everything in my head, like film reels spliced together wrong. His new gym habit, the double Oriole charges, the red nails, and now this, an actual sentence that admitted to something beyond work. I wanted to scream. I wanted to wake him and demand answers. But instead, I whispered into the quiet, "Not yet." Because if I confronted him now, he'd twist it. He'd gaslight me, tell me I was paranoid, make me doubt what I had read with my own eyes. Noah was good at that, turning my questions into proof of my own flaws. So I kept it to myself. I tucked the evidence away, like pressing a flower between pages. Only this one was poison, and it wouldn't soften with time. The next week, more cracks appeared. He worked late 3 nights in a row. Juniper started sleeping closer to my side of the bed, like she sensed my heart was beating too fast. Tessa's eyes sharpened every time I said his name. And then, on Friday, I found the proof I could no longer ignore. He came home, tossing his jacket over the chair, and went straight to the shower. While he was in there, his phone buzzed twice on the counter. Face down, of course. But this time, maybe by accident, one of the previews stayed visible long enough before fading. Jordan Hale, still thinking about your hands. I didn't need to unlock it. I didn't need to read more. The puzzle was complete. When he walked out of the bathroom, towel slung low on his hips, humming like nothing in the world was wrong, I smiled at him with a steadiness I didn't feel. Inside, my stomach was twisting, but my voice stayed calm. Because now, I wasn't just uneasy. I wasn't just suspicious. I knew. And knowledge, I realized, is the first step to power. The first discovery changes you. You don't go back to innocence after that. You live with a low thrum under your skin, a readiness for the next blow. And with Noah, the blows didn't take long to come. Once I saw that message from Jordan, still thinking about your hands, it was like putting on a pair of glasses I should have worn all along. Suddenly, everything sharpened. The way he angled his phone screen away from me, the unexplained shirts I didn't remember seeing before, even his laugh. It used to sound like it belonged to me, but now it rang hollow, like he was lending it out. The escalation began slowly, as if he was testing how much he could get away with. A canceled date night here, a late return there, campaign chaos, he'd say, tossing his jacket over the chair, kissing me quickly before heading straight to the shower. And every time, that lime-sweet scent clung to him. It wasn't soap from our bathroom, it was something else, something chosen for nights out. One evening, I decided to surprise him at the agency. I baked cookies, the kind with dark chocolate chunks he always swore tasted better than chips, and walked the 5 blocks to his office. It was nearly 9 p.m., but his text had said, "Heads down, late night, wish me luck." The building lights glowed dim, the kind of after-hours glow that usually left 1 or 2 offices buzzing. I walked in with the cookies warm in my tote, Juniper's leash wrapped in my other hand. But when I reached the glass doors of the agency suite, the place was empty. Not just empty, dark. I stood there, my reflection caught in the glass, the cookies like an accusation in my bag. The security guard came by on his round and raised an eyebrow. "Looking for someone?" he asked. "Noah Carter," I said, forcing my voice steady. "He works here, said he'd be late." The guard checked his clipboard, then shrugged. "Office closed at 7. Haven't seen anyone since." Juniper tugged at the leash. My hands shook as I muttered thanks and walked back into the night. My phone buzzed 20 minutes later. Noah, with a selfie of him at a desk, captioned, "Still grinding, save me leftovers?" The photo was old. I knew because the dented coffee mug on the desk had been broken weeks ago. That was the night I stopped doubting myself. A week later, the humiliation turned public. Tessa texted me again, but this time it wasn't a screenshot, it was a video. A friend of hers had been at the Oriole, same place, always the same place, and had caught a clip of the crowd. At first, it was just laughing voices, glasses clinking, but then the camera panned across a booth, and there he was. Noah leaning too close to Jordan. Her head tilted, her wine-red nails brushing against his arm. And then, without hesitation, he kissed her. Not a drunken peck, not an accident. A full, deliberate kiss, like the kind he used to give me when we forgot anyone else existed. My throat closed. The video played on loop until my eyes blurred. It wasn't a rumor now. It wasn't a half-seen message or an ambiguous caption. It was him, in plain sight, betraying me with the same mouth that whispered promises against my skin. When he came home that night, I tried to see if he'd confess. I asked casually how the office had been. He spun a story about deadlines, about client feedback, about how Jordan had pulled a miracle with copy. He said her name like it was harmless. He even laughed, telling me she had tripped leaving the office and spilled her coffee everywhere. "Classic Jordan," he said. I stared at him, trying to memorize the ease of his lie, how his eyes didn't flicker, how his hands didn't shake. He had gotten so good at this, too good. The following days bled into each other. He stopped pretending to be careful. Texts came at all hours, his smile lingering on the screen longer than on me. He'd leave for runs and come back smelling like someone else's perfume, faint but undeniable. Juniper barked at him once when he bent down to untie his shoes. "What's up with her?" he asked, chuckling, rubbing her ears like nothing had changed. She turned her head away. The worst moment came 2 Fridays later. Lily invited us both to a small dinner at her apartment. I thought maybe, just maybe, being around family would anchor him back, remind him who we were. Instead, I watched him check his phone under the table, smiling at messages he wouldn't share. Lily noticed. She shot me a quick look, eyebrows furrowed like she could sense the fracture. I smiled back too brightly and kept chewing. After dessert, while he was in the kitchen with Lily, his phone lit up again beside me. I didn't mean to look, but there it was, bold and undeniable. "Jordan Hale. Can't wait to see you later. Don't be too long." It was then I realized he wasn't just sneaking moments anymore. He wasn't even trying to hide. The affair had shifted from stolen time to a second life he was daring me to notice. When we got home, I excused myself to the bedroom early. He stayed in the living room watching highlights with the volume low. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the cloud-spun paint we once laughed about, now suffocating me. Every corner of the apartment was haunted by us, our rituals, our laughter, the trust I had woven into every drawer and wall. And yet here I was, living in a house built on lies. By the time he slid into bed beside me, smelling faintly of soap that wasn't ours, I had made myself a promise. If he was willing to humiliate me in public, then I would no longer protect him in private. The next phase had begun. Because humiliation has a way of burning the hesitation out of you, and I was done being small. There comes a point in betrayal when the pain stops feeling sharp and starts feeling heavy. It isn't knives anymore, it's weights. Heavy enough that you can't lift your head. Heavy enough that breathing feels like work. That's where I found myself after the dinner at Lily's. I had proof now, not whispers, not suspicions, proof. The video of Noah and Jordan kissing, the messages, the late nights, the scent of someone else on his skin. Proof so undeniable it pressed down on me every hour of the day. And still, I stayed. The mornings were the hardest. I'd wake before him, sunlight spilling through our bay window, juniper stretched out at my feet. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, remembering how once that same light had meant safety, warmth, beginnings. Now it felt like exposure, like the sun was watching me play house in a place that wasn't mine anymore. Noah would stir, throw an arm over me like nothing had changed. Sometimes he'd kiss the back of my neck and murmur, "Morning, E." It was cruel how normal he could make it feel. For a few seconds, I almost let myself believe. Then my chest would tighten and I'd remember the text from Jordan or the image of her nails against his arm, and I'd go cold under his touch. I started to wither in ways I didn't want to admit. At work, I missed deadlines. My boss asked if I was okay, and I lied, just tired. My emails piled up like unopened mail in a house no one lives in. Tessa called every night, sometimes just to sit in silence on the phone with me while I stared at my own reflection. "You don't sound like yourself," she said once. "I don't feel like myself," I whispered back. Juniper was the only one who seemed to know exactly what was happening. She shadowed me constantly, following me from room to room. When Noah reached for me, she'd wedge herself between us, curling against my leg as if she could guard me from heartbreak. One night, when I broke down sobbing on the bathroom floor, she pressed her head into my chest until I could breathe again. I wanted to confront him. God, I wanted to scream, to throw his phone at the wall, to demand he look me in the eye and explain how he could dismantle everything we've built. But every time I imagined it, I froze because I knew Noah, how calm he could be, how skilled he was at twisting blame. I pictured myself shaking with rage while he tilted his head and said, "Elena, you're imagining things. You've always been insecure. You're projecting." And I knew I didn't have the strength to fight that battle yet. So I swallowed it. I carried it like a stone in my chest, heavier every day. The humiliation spread beyond just me. At a neighborhood block party, Mrs. Patel introduced us to a new tenant as the sweet couple upstairs. I smiled, shook hands, played the role. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Noah laughing with his phone, his thumb moving quick. My face burned. Did everyone know but me? Was I the only one still pretending this was real? The lowest moment came one Tuesday night. He said he had a client dinner. I didn't ask questions anymore. I just nodded, cleared his plate, fed Juniper, and went to bed early. At midnight, I woke to the sound of his key in the lock. My body froze. Through the thin walls, I heard him stumble slightly, then laugh quietly at himself. A softer laugh followed, feminine, hushed. My chest constricted. I held my breath as I heard voices in the hall, his and hers, then silence. Then the bathroom door shutting. When he slid into bed 15 minutes later, his hair damp, he whispered, "You awake?" I stayed still, my eyes closed, forcing my breathing into an even rhythm. He kissed my shoulder and rolled over, asleep within minutes. I lay there, staring at the darkness, every nerve in my body screaming. That was rock bottom. Because in that moment, I realized he wasn't just cheating, he was erasing me, replacing me piece by piece, while I still lay beside him. I was a placeholder in my own life, and the worst part was how quietly it had happened. The despair was suffocating. For days after, I moved like a ghost. Work didn't matter, food didn't taste, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without flinching. I thought about leaving, but the idea of packing up the life we'd built, our cloud-spun bedroom, our pressed flowers, our dog, felt impossible. It was like trying to imagine tearing down a house with my bare hands. But in the midst of that despair, a flicker of something else began to glow. One night, after crying myself dry, I pulled out the old magazines where I'd pressed the flowers Noah once gave me. I opened them one by one. A daisy, a tulip, a sunflower, each flattened, fragile, brittle. They looked nothing like the day he gave them to me, but they were still there, proof of what once was. And as I touched them, I realized something. Even pressed flat, even dried out, they had survived. So could I. The thought was faint, like a single candle in a dark room, but it was enough. I didn't have a plan yet, I didn't have strength yet, but I knew this: I wasn't going to live the rest of my life like a ghost. And one day soon, Noah Carter was going to see exactly what it meant to underestimate me. When you live at the bottom long enough, even the smallest spark can feel like fire. For me, that spark came on a Sunday morning when Tessa showed up at my door with 2 coffees and a paper bag of bagels. She didn't text, didn't call, she just appeared. Her face was calm, but her eyes searched me the way only a best friend's can, like she was checking for a pulse. She handed me the coffee, sat down at the bay window, and said, "Talk." I tried to brush it off, but the words stuck in my throat. And then before I knew it, everything spilled out. The messages, the late nights, the smell of perfume, the video of the kiss at the Oriole, the night I thought I heard another woman's laugh in my hallway. I hadn't told anyone all of it in order, not even myself. Saying it aloud was like opening a wound I had been pretending wasn't bleeding. Tessa didn't interrupt. She listened with her hand over mine, her eyes filling with tears. When I finished, she didn't waste time sugarcoating. "Elena, you are not crazy. You are not paranoid. You're being betrayed, and you've been made to doubt yourself so deeply that you can't even trust your own eyes. That's how he controls you." Her certainty broke something loose inside me. I cried in a way I hadn't allowed myself to before, the kind of sobs that shake your whole body until you're too exhausted to keep hiding. She held me through it, then pulled back just enough to look me in the eye. "So now the question is," she said, voice steady, "what do you want to do about it?" I didn't know. I told her I couldn't leave. Our lease, Juniper, the life I had built around him. I told her Noah was too good at twisting things, that I would crumble if I confronted him. But Tessa only squeezed my hand tighter. "Then we'll build you up until you can stand," she said, piece by piece. "You don't have to do this alone." That night, after Noah left for another late gym session, I sat at the desk in our clout-spun painted bedroom and opened my laptop. For the first time, I stopped running from the truth. I created a folder. Inside it, I saved everything: screenshots of messages, the video of him kissing Jordan, even notes of the times he'd come home late. Each file labeled neat, undeniable. My hands trembled as I did it, but for once, the trembling wasn't weakness, it was focus. Juniper lay by my feet the whole time, her head resting on her paws. Every so often, she'd lift her eyes to me, and I felt as though she knew, as though she understood I was finally fighting back. 2 days later, I got another unexpected ally, Lily. She called and asked to meet for coffee. She was nervous, her words careful, like she didn't want to overstep. But when we sat down, she stirred her drink 3 times before finally speaking. "Elena, has Noah seemed off to you?" I froze. "Off how?" She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "He cancels plans with me a lot now, and last week I saw him at a bar near my office. He wasn't alone." The breath caught in my throat. Even though I already knew, hearing it from his sister made it real in a way that shook me. Lily's eyes filled with regret. "I don't want to make trouble, but I don't like what I'm seeing. You've been good for him, better than he's ever deserved, and I don't want to watch you get hurt." Her words lit another spark. If even Lily could see the cracks, then the mask Noah wore was slipping. He wasn't as untouchable as he believed. When I came home that night, Noah was sprawled on the couch, phone in hand. He smiled up at me with that practiced warmth. "Hey babe, good day?" I looked at him, really looked. For the first time, I didn't feel the confusion that had haunted me for weeks. I didn't feel small. I saw him clearly, a man who thought his lies were stronger than my will. And in that moment, I made a quiet vow. I would not let him erase me. I would not let him walk away clean. The turning point wasn't fireworks or screaming. It wasn't even visible from the outside. It was a private vow whispered in my chest, a folder of evidence tucked away, a steadiness I hadn't felt in months. But I knew this much. Noah Carter believed he could keep juggling his double life forever. He thought I would stay silent, too broken to act. He had no idea how wrong he was. Once you decide you won't stay silent, the world looks different. The same streets, the same rooms, even the same man sitting across from you on the couch. They all become part of the battlefield. I didn't announce my decision. I didn't confront Noah. I simply began to watch, to listen, and to collect. The folder on my laptop grew heavier by the day. Every late night excuse went into a document with the time and date. Every charge from the Oriole on our bank statement was copied and saved. Every text Tessa forwarded, every screenshot I managed to catch in those brief seconds his phone lit up, I filed them neatly. Proof, layer upon layer. I wasn't gathering out of desperation anymore. I was preparing. I studied his patterns. Noah was careless in ways he didn't realize. He always said he was working late on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but those were the same nights the bar charges showed up. He came home flushed on Fridays, smelling faintly of lime and perfume, and claimed he'd been at the gym. On Sundays, when he said he was going for long runs, I noticed the same cab company charges appearing on our statements. He wasn't running, he was riding, to her. Tessa became my silent partner in this. She was the one who reminded me to back up everything to a flash drive. Screenshots can vanish if he gets clever, she warned. She was also the one who pushed me to think about the end game. What do you want, Elena? Do you want him exposed? That question lingered with me. At first, all I wanted was survival. But the more I gathered, the more I watched him lie to my face, the more I felt something sharper taking shape. I didn't just want to leave. I wanted him to pay. Even Lily gave me more fuel without realizing it. She texted one night asking if Noah was okay. He canceled on me again, she wrote, said he was sick, but I saw him tagged in a coworker's photo at the Oriole. Her words made my stomach turn, but they also steadied my resolve. Noah wasn't just betraying me, he was betraying his family, too. His lies were spilling everywhere, and I could use that. The hardest part was pretending, sitting across from him at dinner, nodding at his stories, laughing at his jokes. Sometimes he'd reach across the table and take my hand like nothing was wrong, and I'd have to remind myself not to pull away too fast. I learned to act as smoothly as he did. He thought I was still the woman who doubted her own instincts. He didn't see the woman quietly sharpening her knives. One night, he left his laptop open on the counter. He'd gone to shower, and Juniper was barking at something outside, so he left in a hurry. My hands trembled as I slid into his chair. I knew I shouldn't. It felt dangerous, but I couldn't stop myself. His email was open. I scrolled quickly, my heart pounding. Most messages were work, but then I found them. A thread with Jordan. The subject line was blank, the way people do when they don't want to leave a trail. Her words jumped out like acid. Last night was worth the risk. I hate having to pretend at the office. When are you going to tell her? I snapped photos of the screen with my phone. My fingers shook, but my breathing stayed steady. This was it. The proof that would end any argument he tried to spin. When he came out of the shower, towel around his waist, smiling like everything was fine, I smiled back. Want me to order takeout? I asked, my voice calm. He grinned and kissed my forehead, never knowing I had just secured another weapon. That night, lying in bed beside him, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control. It wasn't full, it wasn't finished, but it was there, buzzing faintly under my skin. I wasn't ready to strike yet, not until the timing was perfect, not until I could make sure the damage would be permanent. But for the first time since his betrayal began, I could see the path forward. Noah Carter believed he was the puppeteer, pulling every string, but I had learned his moves, I had mapped his patterns, and soon I would cut every string he thought held me down. This wasn't about waiting anymore. This was about building. And when the moment came, I would make sure he fell harder than he ever thought possible. By the time I was ready to strike, I didn't feel rage anymore. Rage burns too hot, too fast. What I carried instead was colder, steadier, a kind of sharpened calm. Noah thought he still had control, thought I was the woman who would cry and shrink and let him twist the story. What he didn't know was that I had been building a case strong enough to crush him under the weight of his own lies. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. His agency was hosting a client showcase, a polished event with cocktails and carefully staged speeches. Noah had been bragging about it for weeks, talking about how he was going to impress the Porter account, how the whole team would be there, including Jordan. I remember sitting at the kitchen table while he rehearsed his pitch under his breath, watching the way he smoothed his tie, the way he looked in the mirror as though preparing for applause. He had no idea that his final performance was about to end in disaster. I didn't go to the showcase alone. Tessa came with me, standing tall in a simple black dress, her phone clutched in her hand. Lily agreed to meet us there too. She had seen enough, heard enough, and was done covering for her brother. Between the three of us, we carried every piece of evidence, neatly organized. Screenshots, videos, emails, proof of every betrayal. The room buzzed with music and chatter, the kind of corporate energy that smells like ambition. I spotted Noah almost immediately, standing near the bar, one hand on a glass, the other resting far too close to Jordan's waist. He laughed, tilting his head the way he once did with me, and for a moment I felt the old ache. But then he turned, his eyes scanning the room, and froze when he saw me. "Elena," he said, surprise flickering across his face as I approached. "What are you—" "You might want to finish that sentence carefully," I interrupted. My voice was steady, too steady. Before he could react, Lily stepped up beside me. She looked her brother dead in the eye and said, "You should stop pretending, Noah. Everyone here deserves to know what you've been doing." The room went quiet, curious eyes turning toward us. Tessa lifted her phone and played the video, the one of Noah and Jordan kissing at the Oriole. The screen glowed in the dim light, the sound of laughter and glasses clinking, filling the air. Gasps rippled across the crowd. Jordan paled, her hand dropping from Noah's arm. I didn't stop there. I read out one of the messages, my voice clear. "Still thinking about your hands?" I let the words hang in the air like smoke. Every whisper, every shift in the crowd told me the damage was spreading. Noah's face went white, then red. "Elena," he stammered, "this is out of context." "No," I cut in, "this is the context. Months of lies. Months of humiliating me, lying to your family, to your coworkers, to everyone who believed you were decent. This is who you are, Noah Carter." The silence after that was suffocating. Then, slowly, people began to turn away. Conversations picked up again, but not with him, not around him. His boss's face was stiff, his jaw clenched. The client he had been desperate to impress excused himself, muttering something sharp to the agency director. Jordan slipped out first, her cheeks flushed. Noah tried to follow, but every step he took was heavy, the eyes of the room pressing against him. He looked back at me once, desperation flickering there, like he thought I might save him, but I didn't. I just stood still, Juniper's leash looped in my hand, even though she wasn't there, as if her steady weight was reminding me to hold my ground. That night, his world collapsed. Lily cut him off, his agency suspended him pending review, and Jordan, from what I later heard, stopped returning his calls. All the threads he thought he was juggling snapped at once, and he was left standing in the ruins he had built. When he came home later, his face pale, his voice pleading, I didn't shout. I didn't cry, I simply handed him the flash drive with all the evidence I hadn't shown yet. "In case you ever think about lying again," I said softly. Then I picked up my bag, called Juniper to my side, and walked out the door. The final blow wasn't just public humiliation. It wasn't just watching his career, his reputation, his affair crumble in front of him. It was leaving him with nothing, not even me to blame anymore. Because the truth was out, and there was no one left to save him. When I finally walked out of that apartment for the last time, carrying Juniper's leash in one hand and a small suitcase in the other, I expected to feel broken. I expected to collapse in the hallway or second-guess myself as soon as the door clicked shut behind me. But what I felt instead was a strange, quiet freedom. The air outside was cool, the night alive with the ordinary sounds of the city, and for the first time in months, I could breathe without choking on lies. In the days that followed, there were moments when grief still clawed at me. I would catch sight of something, a pressed flower between the pages of an old magazine, or the dented coffee mug I had packed, and my chest would ache. But instead of drowning in that ache, I let it remind me of something important. Those things were real because I had loved sincerely. Noah's betrayal didn't erase that. If anything, it showed me that my love had depth, honesty, and devotion, things he could never give back because he was incapable of them. I moved into a small apartment across town. It didn't have the bay window or the cloud-spun walls, but it had space for me, and it had space for Juniper. We built new rituals together. Morning walks to a park she had never seen before. Quiet evenings with Tessa sprawled on the couch, her voice filling the silence with laughter. Even Lily visited once, awkward but sincere, bringing me a plant for the windowsill. "He doesn't deserve you," she said quietly. "He never did." Piece by piece, I began to stitch myself back together. Not into the woman I was before, I couldn't be her anymore, but into someone stronger, someone who had looked betrayal in the face, survived the humiliation, and chosen not to let it define her. Healing wasn't a straight line. There were nights I still cried, days when anger flared hot and sharp, when I wanted to text him just to scream, But every time I reminded myself, silence is more powerful than rage. My absence was the one thing he couldn't twist, couldn't manipulate, couldn't spin into another lie. One evening, weeks later, I walked past the bookstore where we first met. The awning was the same, the glass doors shining with warm light. For a moment, I remembered that rainy day, the broken umbrella, the laugh that had once charmed me. But then I realized something. That story didn't define me anymore. It was just one chapter, and I had already turned the page. I looked down at Juniper, her gray muzzle pressed happily against my leg, and I felt the weight of everything I had learned. That betrayal isn't the end. That pain doesn't erase your worth. That love, even when given to the wrong person, still proves what you're capable of. And so here I am telling you my story because maybe you're where I was, lying awake at night, doubting yourself, wondering if the knots in your stomach are just paranoia. Maybe you're clinging to a love that keeps slipping through your fingers, blaming yourself for cracks you didn't cause. If that's you, hear me clearly. You are not crazy. You are not broken. You are not unworthy. You are stronger than the lies you've been fed, and you deserve more than someone who treats your trust like it's disposable. The day you decide to stop protecting the person who betrayed you is the day you begin to protect yourself. And once you take that step, everything changes. So if this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt the sting of betrayal, if you've ever doubted your own worth because of someone else's lies, don't carry that pain in silence. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, hit like so that others will see it in their darkest hour, and subscribe because the truth is, your story isn't over. My name is Elena Brooks. I'm 28 years old, and this was the story of how I discovered the person I loved betrayed me. But more importantly, it's the story of how I found my way back to myself. And if you're listening now, maybe it's the reminder you need that you can too. Your healing starts when you decide it does. The next chapter of your life is waiting, and it might be better than you can imagine.